Have you played D&D for a while and are now feeling that combat is repetitive and stale? Perhaps your combat encounters are something like this. Hit, miss, hit, hit, hit. Perhaps it is time to mix things up and add a little spice to your combat. In today's video, we're going to be talking about critical roles. Now, this is not a video being critical about Matt Mercer's Critical Role in the critically acclaimed Critical Role, but rather the critical rules for the critical roles. With that out of the way, what are the rules for critical roles? So critical roles can be divided into two separate categories. You have the critical hits and you have the critical failures. So, as you know, different systems means that there's different, though similar, set of rules. For example, with critical hits, with D&D 5th edition, you have where if you roll a 20 on a 20-sided dice, so also known as a nat 20, it is considered an automatic critical hit, and thus you result in doing double the damage. Now, going back a little bit, with Pathfinder 1E or with D&D 3.5, you have where the situation of where, once again, if you land a 20, it is considered a hit, a critical hit, but you must confirm if it's truly critical or not by rolling again. And if that second result results in your character hitting the target and bypassing their AC, then you are confirming the critical hit. Thus, you are able to do the critical damage. All right. It gets a little bit weird with, I wouldn't say weird, but a little bit complex in that how different weapons technically have different critical ranges, but you still need to be able to hit. And the only one that guarantees you hitting is the natural 20. So, what about Pathfinder 2nd edition? See, this is kind of where it kind of lands in between both sides of the spectrum. So what they did, it seems like, is where they took the rules of first edition and condensed it down to a little bit more of a simplified process, but not as simplistic as you would have with D&D 5e. And this is where, if you make an attack and succeed with a natural 20, then it's a crit. Also, if you make the attack with a natural 20 and you would naturally miss with that, then it's not a crit, it's just a hit. So basically it took what you would have done in first edition, or 3.5, and just did it with one roll. You see the roll, you see the results, you don't need to roll again for another set. It also had the additional set of rules where if you hit something and you exceed the target's AC by 10 or more, then you actually go into the critical success range and you're able to do your double damage. So therefore, if you just way overpower something, you're just critting left and right? So it's all these different methodologies to give you the percentages of what you win and how you would critically hit. So now the rules are similar, but kind of go in the opposite direction when you're talking about crit failures, because then on the other end of the spectrum, instead of natural 20s and stuff, we're talking about number 1. So if you roll 1, you would follow a similar set of rules for either fumbling and failing, versus how you would do with the crits. Now that you understand the different rules for the different systems, for when you can critically fail or succeed, let's talk about some epic ways on how you can make it more fun and some randomness within combat. So as we said, with the regular rules, you would typically get your crit and you would do double damage, which can in itself be exciting because sometimes it can lead to the demise of certain monsters and what have you. But what we're talking about here today is using different crit hit and crit failure tables. There are numerous tables out there, some which you could purchase as just as a stack of cards, right? Or where it's literally a table and then you can roll, whether it be a D20, some of them are D100s, there's just all sorts of different tables that you can find out there. Some of them for combat, some of them are for magic and stuff. And that will add a fun element and some randomness and some chaos to your combat encounters. Now, GMs, I'd like to point out that you must make sure that the players are in alignment with this idea, right? And so that way they understand this and, can enjoy this as well. Now, something that we do as GMs is that we offer this opportunity, but they don't have to take it, right? So we could say like one night, okay, hey, you rolled a crit hit and you succeeded, right? So do you just want to do your double damage like normal, or do you want to take a chance from the crit table? And there's some nights, where some people want to just keep it more simple and we'll just do the double, but there's the excitement of like, oh no, let's roll, let's see what do I get, right? So giving them the option, the opportunity, instead of just doing it necessarily all the time. The other thing with that is with GMs is remember we typically have this rule and concept, and you should convey this and enforce it for your players and for yourself, and that is, what is good for the goose is also good for the gander, right? Like that saying. So if there are certain things on the crit table or crit failure that normally you would not have done, then skip that. Either have them re-roll or pick the next one in line or what have you, right? Because if the players can do that certain activity, then it is okay for the NPCs to do, or the enemies to do that back in kind. So anyway, let us move on and look at some examples of some of these critical hits and failures on these tables. Okay, so here's some of the examples of what you might see on some of these crit tables, right? For example, some of the ones that we just found and we picked out there is one that's called like crippling blow. So when you confirm, you basically do your normal damage, but the target suffers a permanent limp, and so therefore they take a -5 to their movement speed until they're healed magically. All right. Another one, which is like where you sever an artery. You do normal damage, but when you inflict bleed damage, and they do 1d4 points of bleed every round until they get healed. Another great one is you break their weapon arm, right? So basically you strike so hard that the target drops their weapon, and then they have a disadvantage on their attacks until they are healed. Fun one is where maybe you how you just overcame this person. Maybe it's a leader and you did a critical strike against them and you just do a roar, and then you gain advantage on your next intimidation or maybe persuasion based check, right? And so not only do these critical things, these tables, add variety and chaos and randomness to how the encounter can shift and stuff like that, it also creates RP opportunities, so that way you can help them encourage the players to get more involved and describe some of their things. So that way if maybe they go, well, as you can see here, like with the broken arm, right? You can say, oh yes, I took my great, my warhammer and I smacked his arm because of the critical thing that he picked. And so he has guidance on how to describe his RP, right? Now, granted, depending on your campaign, right? We've talked about before that not everything needs to be gritty or savage or something. Some of the people that like to play prefer to have a little bit of silliness. Well, I will let you know that there are crit tables for that. For example, right? There's one that I saw that where if you critically succeed, you could have where either your pants or maybe your enemy's pants falls down, and then everybody within the 30 feet area must make a will save, or they just bust out laughing and are distracted, right? And so it just it's a ridiculous, as you might see, kind of like Zorro, where he goes, ha ha, and then the person's pants falls down, right? We have critical fails where maybe when you draw this one and it's like you overcommit and you fall prone and you miss your attack and then it causes an attack of opportunity, or when you hit so hard that you have to roll, and then on a 1d6 you either damage your weapon or maybe even break it, or like we said with the silly ones, a chicken randomly appears and clucks angrily at you. Just be careful not to make the chicken any more angrier or face the wrath of the chicken swarm. That's right, that's for you Legend of Zelda players out there. So anyway, why don't you share with us your thoughts? Is there maybe some epic story that you wish to share of where your group used these epic crit tables and failures? So let us know below. That's it for today, and thank you for watching.